it is written, you must worship Jehovah, your God, alone.
Right.
It is Jehovah alone.
Yes.
You must worship.
Yes. Absolutely.
Jehovah alone.
Yes. Right.
And to the exclusive devotion of anybody else.
Right. I agree with that.
Yeah. So you don't worship Jesus, you don't worship the Holy Spirit.
Right, because they are all one God, Jehovah.
No, Jesus is a spirit person, and
see, now you're adding more.
Spirit person,
but we were talking about
the Holy Spirit is God's power.
See, and that's what the Watchtower tells you. I know.
Jesus identified the Holy Spirit as a helper.
Yes, he is absolutely a helper. That's his role. Because the Father, the Son, and the Spirit are not the exact same identical person. They are three persons with different roles. They are all Jehovah God. They are all united in their roles. Everything they do is together, perfectly together. But they do things in different ways. The Father elects, and the Son paid the debt for his children. The Holy Spirit is the one who regenerates the children and resurrects us in the end. And the Father and the Son and the Spirit, according to scriptures, all resurrected Jesus. That there is, and I know that in your religion you're taught that the Trinity is like this evil Babylonian thing, but in fact it was developed by people reading the Bible. And if you may not agree with it, but I would hope that you could look at it honestly and see that's where I'm coming from. I have reasons for what I believe.
And that you mentioned that because it wasn't till the Israelites left. It was particularly after the Israelites left Babylon captivity that they came back with the Trinitarian doctrine.
The Israelites?
Mm-hmm.
When were the Israelites Trinitarians? Before Christ.
They started worshiping different gods. Yeah.
That's not Trinitarian, though. That's Babylonian. It's not the same thing.
They worshiped Jehovah alone when they went to it as Israelites, but when they came back, they started worshiping different gods. They worshipped Chemosh, Dagon, all these different gods.
Well, they've been doing that for much longer than just Babylon. They were worshiping Baal, they were worshiping the Asherah, they were doing all of that because.
But particularly when they came back.
No, not particularly. That they certainly would have. The Israelites certainly would have taken on, but then they would have taken on Babylonian things because a lot of them were worldly, and that was always the case. We've both seen that all the way through the Old Testament, that for a while they would worship Yahweh alone, and then they would slowly take on these other gods too, and they would add that to their worship, and then he would discipline them for doing it and send them into captivity or bring them into war.
And why was he disciplining them when they worshipped other gods?
Because they were worshiping false gods. He is a jealous God. Yeah. They had to worship Yahweh alone.
So he's a jealous God. He doesn't want anybody worshiping the Holy Spirit or Christ Jesus.
Unless they are Yahweh, because if they are, then he does want us to worship them.
Yet again, we hear the same problem with her presupposition that I believe in and worship three gods. I have refuted this countless times by this conversation, and yet she always goes right back to the same arguments and assumptions. Note how several times she emphasizes God alone, as if that somehow refutes my beliefs. She's still ignoring that I worship and believe in one God. This is what the Watchtower does to its followers. It's classic brainwashing. She often talks about reasoning, but she's not doing any of that for herself. She just continues to buy into everything and anything that the organization tells her. I've been warned periodically that this is what you will run into with older Jehovah's Witnesses because they're so completely sold out to the company that there just doesn't seem to be any way to get through to them anymore. But for me, I press on because it's not up to me to save her. My God is mighty to save even this deeply indoctrinated woman who is so set in her ways.
You see, I think that's the problem, that what we're discussing, that is the basis
Yeah.
of my faith and of faith. We have to get a basic.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would challenge that you approach the Bible with a Unitarian view and refuse to even consider what other people would see if they didn't assume a Unitarian view. Because that's certainly very, very much what the Watchtower is about, is the Unitarian understanding. So I agree. We definitely, and that's a core issue, and I'm glad we got to talk about that a bit today. But I hope you'll keep talking with me, because I have lots of other questions.
I enjoy talking with you, but as I say that is the basic basis of our belief, because by believing it that, giving Jehovah our worship alone, then enables us then to have Holy Spirit, so that we can be in unity, we can understand the Bible, and we can bring it to mind with Holy Spirit help.
Let's examine these truth claims that she just made here. First, she says that JWs are giving Jehovah our worship alone. Yet again, she's saying this as an attempted contrast to the straw man argument that she has set up, suggesting that I worship three gods. Also, if you've talked much with JWs or read much of their literature, you may have noticed how the Watchtower makes itself basically interchangeable with Jehovah. For instance, when someone wakes up and leaves the Watchtower, the phrase they always say is, "Come back to Jehovah," as if leaving the organization is the same thing as leaving Jehovah. So, do they really worship Jehovah alone, or do they worship Jehovah's organization alone? Next, she says they are enabled to have Holy Spirit. Because they insist that the Holy Spirit is not a person, but instead an impersonal force, they can claim to have access to him even though they have no relationship with him. The Spirit they believe in has more in common with Star Wars than it does with the Bible, which clearly shows us the personal attributes of the Holy Spirit. So, do they have the Holy Spirit? I would say that they do follow a spirit, but not the Holy Spirit. And she says they can be in unity and understand the Bible. These two have to go together because they have a publishing company telling them how to interpret the Bible. As we've talked about before, they don't have unity, they have uniformity, because they unquestioningly follow everything the organization tells them, no matter how often those teachings change or flip-flop. She knows full well that I read and comprehend the Bible, but she ignores that when she's making these claims because she's just reciting what she's been taught to say at this point. It wasn't long before this point that she stated that the Bible is so easy to read that even a child can understand it, and then immediately launched into defending why no one can understand it without the Watchtower to explain it.
So that actually reminds me, do you mind if I ask another question?
Go ahead.
Okay, would you say that you are in unity with, in a general spiritual kind of sense, are you in unity with Jehovah's Witnesses from 100 years ago?
Well, I'm in unity because I'm in the same thought line, but how else? We have the same thoughts, so we're in unity in our thoughts. When they were alive, I had the same thoughts they did.
So when they celebrated Christmas and you don't celebrate Christmas?
I was just going to say, at the time, they didn't really understand things. They had, they had to learn things over a period of time, and Holy Spirit gave them clarification on things.
So if, say, somebody...
so there has been modifications on things.
Yeah, there's a lot of differences in your beliefs over time.
Yes, but that core belief that Jesus is Jehovah's Son, independent of Jehovah, is the basis that is of our faith. And if I don't accept that, then I don't have Jehovah's help of the Holy Spirit to help me live my life the Christian way and to understand the Bible.
So what about the early witnesses who worshiped Jesus and taught that you should worship Jesus?
Pardon me?
What about the early witnesses that worshiped Jesus and taught that?
I don't know of any witnesses that worship Jesus.
Yeah, some of the early writings from Russell, actually, he did teach back then in the Watchtower that the early writings anyway, that Jesus was to be worshipped, and then that was pretty early on. They did change that eventually,
Not worship.
Yep.
There's a difference between worship and reverence.
Yeah, no, they didn't say obeisance or anything. He actually said worship. Yes, when people would ask, "Are we to worship Jesus?" Yes, we are. So
I didn't see any writings on that.
Yeah, that was before your time.
Before your time?
A little before my time.
Probably a rumor. I haven't seen any actual writing or any beliefs.
Okay. So, but if they did,
use that as a.
Because she has no old publications and is not even really allowed to look at them, she tries to suggest here that I can't use the fact that the Watchtower did teach their followers to worship Jesus right up until the 1950s to make my point either. She's trying to dismiss what I'm saying by kind of pretending that no one could know that, and so there's no way it could be true, and I certainly could never know it. Admitting that it's true would mean that she lost this argument. However, if we were to talk about this at a different time, she might admit it's true if it meant she could use it to defend whatever argument she was making then, such as their twist on Proverbs 4 and the light getting brighter. Then you can be sure she would readily admit that they did used to indeed teach the worship of Jesus for decades, right from the founding of their religion. Sadly, for her, I think these kinds of discussions are more of a game where she just tries to win arguments, even by making things up whenever it suits her interests. That doesn't sound much like sharing the truth, does it?
But if they did, would you say that you are not in unity with them?
I would. Anybody can say they're what they are. It's what they believe that makes them a witness. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't be in unity with them, no.
Okay. And what about witnesses today who say that Jesus is their mediator? Are you in unity with them?
Well, the people that say that, the witnesses that say, everybody has a different level of understanding.
Okay, yeah, that's a key point.
And some of the witnesses that say Jesus is a mediator, when they are shown in the Bible that a mediator is the one who is the middle of an agreement, who is the middleman in an agreement, then they will understand that the agreement is a covenant between Jesus and the 144,000.
So when Peter says there's one mediator between God and man, that's not theirs.
That is the benefit from that.
Okay, so that actually kind of shares an interesting point, though, that you're saying that some of them just haven't figured that part out yet. They're just not there.
They linked it as mediator.
Okay, so you don't think that could happen in the Christian church too, where there's people at different levels of learning?
Well, that's a minor thing. Believing that Jesus and Jehovah and the Holy Spirit are one is a major thing, and it's the basis of faith.
Yeah, I'd say the mediator thing isn't minor at all, but you're right. Who the nature of Yahweh is very important.
Yeah, that's the basis of faith.
Yeah, I would agree.
So that makes everything different. I mean, we can things can be cleared up and straightened out on a minor detail, but that's a major detail. That's a major thing, not a detail.